This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with Brandon Manley of iCAMP. Brandon, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Hall.
Great. So what was your background before joining iCAMP? What did you do before this?
Actually, my background is technically in software development, but I don't have one of those classic stories for becoming a software developer, to be honest. I grew up always thinking not that it's the most exciting thing, but I grew up always thinking I was going to be a lawyer. And I was doing sort of the philosophy, political science, pre-law track, but I really saw by the time I was, that age in college that I was more interested in business. And, I thought, what's going to get my foot in the door more than anything else? And just what I think every company right now, in a way, is a technology company, or at least the ones that are going to get business and stick around. So I thought to learn how to program. I started by doing it online and then attended the Flatiron School in New York, which is a boot camp. After that, I worked for a couple of years as a developer and then got into transitioned more to like the project management side, but it was very helpful being a developer first. And this is how I went from, developer to project manager to manager.
And so what led you to start work in this space as far as why did you choose this space?
Yeah. So it actually is very personal. For a while, I was doing websites sort of as like a small dev shop, doing it for clients. And then my wife was worked in real estate, and it gave me, I had the flexibility. We both had schedules that were flexible. I had a workspace that was flexible, and we started thinking about kids, et cetera. Now we have two, and actually a third one's on the way. But we moved back to where I grew up, which is in Southampton, New York. Anyone from New York is probably familiar with the Hamptons. I grew up here, but every summer, and now because of COVID, all the time, we have a very select group of people who spend their time here. And when we were here, year round, it's different. Now it's different again, but there just aren't as many enrichment opportunities for kids. And so we started thinking about what kind of program do we want for our kids that is not here? Okay, we had a list. Okay, what can we do? And given my background in technology, that's where iCAMP was born.
Can you tell us a little bit about iCAMP and what it is and what you're doing there with it?
Yeah. So iCAMP is a STEAM education program. So the idea is that for us, we think creativity and technology, are two sides of the same coin. I always tell people that writing code is like doing, creating a great piece of art. It takes just as a different type of creativity, but creativity nonetheless. And so, we saw there was sort of a disconnect sometimes when people thought about the two. I had one person who was a director at a school ask me why art and technology have anything to do with one another. But anyway, so, my wife and I had the idea. We started off with a day camp in Southampton. And within a couple of weeks, we filled up the space. We ended up doing like 3 or 4 times more business than we had expected the first summer. And we always thought, how are we going to scale something like this? And we had a few ideas. The day camp is still around and going strong, even with COVID right now. And we thought, online is the way to go, but we don't know when we're going to be ready for that. And given COVID, it pushed our hand. And since March, we've gone online and gotten some traction there. We've actually gotten a whole lot of traction too, working with learning pods in person as well. But iCAMP is really teaching kids about STEAM topics: coding, robotics, engineering, filmmaking, animation, 3D printing, but in a way that resonates with them. There are lots of programs that we say are direct competitors or competitors, but I think it's really about the approach and the philosophy of the program that helps you create like a cult-like following, and that's what it really is. It's like every client has like 2 heads. It's the child and the parent. Both have to want to come back. And I think by us catering to both equally, I think we've been able to create this following that's like dogmatic about us, which is, is how we've been able to grow so rapidly in the last couple of months, even when a lot of businesses are not doing any business. And we've done more in the last 8 weeks than last year.
And so what's your advice for people investing in this ed tech space, so to speak?
Yeah. So I'd say that you want to talk to the parents if you can, like talk to customers. Maybe this is obvious advice, but just from getting feedback from parents and hearing from parents of friends who've taken the program or vice versa, you want people to really resonate with the brand. And maybe this is like, for everything, but there's just so much competition that if there are people who want to use us no matter what, I think this is very powerful. And also if you have kids, I'd say try to enroll in some classes. Now that we're online, you can take a class from anywhere. But if you can hear from the parents and hear from the kids too, this is true for any company, right? Then you can see if it has staying power.
Well, so how do you see the ed tech industry evolving from these COVID times and what you're seeing out there and what you're doing? Where do you think it's going?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everyone knows that it was hot before COVID. I've seen projections of it growing in the next 5 years, 11% a year, by 60 billion. I know right now we're busier than ever. I expect that every company working in ed tech is busier than ever. I don't think anyone knows exactly where things are going to settle, but I expect that education is not going back to the way it was done beforehand, not completely at least. Right now, it's hot in the news that families are building these learning pods, and I think this is really going to challenge the way that people look at education. What we offer is not traditional academic subjects. However, we'd like to think that we offer topics or education and topics that are very practical for like a long-term job security. So obviously we know that adults, college students, I took this boot camp at Flatiron, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if more and more parents start looking at this alternative education as a way of like filling the gap that's being left now that schools are no longer full-time.
That's great. And did you mention the growth rate, or what is the growth rate of this type of education?
Yeah, so it was projected to be between 2018 and 2023, about 11% a year. I expect, though, I don't know, but I expect that now it's growing by more than that. And once the dust settles, I suspect that we'll see these projections change.
And how many companies are engaged in it now, like you are, if you had to put a guess on it?
Yeah, I mean, there are 5 or 6 really noteworthy players. There are lots, right? And there are lots of companies like ours who trying to transition from being more of a local program to being a national program. Some of the noteworthy ones, I mean, maybe you've heard of ID Tech, which is doing technology camps for a long time. They're now moving into the online space more than ever. Varsity Tutors, Tutor Me Out School, Junie Learning. Now, there are 5 or 6 medium-sized to larger-sized players that have been in the space and are looking to, each of them has a different sort of niche or different sort of like unique selling proposition, different philosophy on education. But you're seeing them all adapt different ways to the way the education landscape is changing right now really rapidly.
And so what do you see as the challenges in this space for this new pod training that you're doing? What do you think is the issues or hurdles that it has to overcome?
Well, I mean, it has to overcome the ones that you've always had to. Talent, and just the instructors, the training of the instructors, having that consistent uniform experience from class to class. I mean, of course, that's always a challenge. But now it's like, being one step ahead of what the consumer is asking for. And now it's changing so quickly. We got very lucky, for example, in that we foresaw that this summer people will be potting up for doing summer camp. And, we probably worked with about 200 families in our area this summer every week doing these private camps. And that's an example how, we got lucky in foreseeing this. And now the same things are happening again this school year. And, based on people's economic backgrounds, their views on education, every family are handling it differently. But right now the challenge is pivoting to provide the service that you as a company are best suited to provide and where you are likely to find the most success in your predictions in terms of what your audience is going to be asking for. Because, us, for example, we have 2 or 3 services where we're betting on come the fall, given the way we think things are going to go.
So what exactly are those services that iCAMP offers, and how do you fit into the overall landscape? What piece are you doing?
Yeah. We started just by luck of where we are, where I'm from, in a more affluent area. And so this is, the clientele that we're used to dealing with. And, I always like to say to the team that, I feel like we're in the hospitality business. I like to, we focus on this audience because this is the audience we ended up with. It's lucky that it's an audience that is willing to spend money on education. At the same time, there are challenges because you really have to be providing the best service, both in the class, outside the class. What we're looking to do, or what we will be doing this fall, is on the online, we'll have semester-long courses that are open enrollment. We'll have one-on-one tutoring in specific topics. We'll be having private group or pod semester-long sessions that people can sign up for, and we can craft the curriculum and the schedule around your pod. In the in-person front, we'll be doing also pod enrichment. So you can tell us the hours and the days you'd like us to come for the semester, and we'll come and we'll do the STEAM enrichment around your school schedule. We're doing virtual school supervision and enhancement. So we have families who they're not going back to school, but they're still paying, $50,000 a year for their private school. But the school's only doing, whatever, it's 9 to 12 and 1 to 3 or something like that. And the parents want to still have a normal life, get work done, not have the kids all over them, which I can relate with as a parent. And so we're sending our instructors to supervise the kids while they're in virtual school, to help them, as well as during those downtimes to provide enrichment. And the final piece we're offering is essentially almost like a homeschooling plus enrichment. So we're putting together full academic curriculum as well as enrichment sessions for pods of families.
Great. Sound like you're getting a lot of traction there with the community. How do you see expanding this outside your local area?
Yeah, that's something that we're always considering when we're building out our systems. As an engineer, or since I have this background in software engineering, sometimes I have a tendency to over-engineer things, but I do always like to have systems in place, and I always think about how can we scale something like this. So the online is obvious how that's scalable. We are still looking on the online, given that there's lots of very tough national competition. We still are looking to target more affluent areas, and rather than going after kids coding and that kind of stuff online, we are targeting specific geographic areas. That being said, our virtual instructors are everywhere, so we don't need to find local people. So that part's easier to scale. In terms of the scaling in person, the idea is to do this something similar in that we find similar geographic areas. Like the next location we're probably going to be opening up shop would be in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is nearby and is very similar clientele. And the idea here is to empower the instructors the same way we're doing here, through training, through curriculum, and through handling the operations for them. Right now, I can tell you, for example, we probably have 30 instructors who are working for us in the area, and we don't ever meet any of them face to face. All of our training all of our onboarding is done remote. So for us, it's and also recruitment's done remote. So for us, it doesn't really seem like a real big difference in having, an operation here relative to having one in any other affluent, suburban area in the country.
So you're already working virtual or by remote anyway, and so scaling it outside your area won't be hard because you're already distributed, so to speak.
Yeah, funny enough, even though, like I said, these 30 instructors, they've never met the only other iCampers they ever meet are the fellow instructors who, have the same assignments. Other than that, everything else is done remotely, the training, the onboarding, the recruitment. So in that sense, we're trying to build a model that, we're trying to be disciplined enough to do it here such that we have practice doing it in other places.
Well, that's great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I had thought about, I want to make sure that we talked about COVID and how that's changing the landscape, which I think we've covered in detail. So I think a nice thing to touch on is how one of the things that we like to do that other programs maybe shy away from is we work with children that are a little bit younger than a lot of competitors do. So we have 4, 5, 6-year-olds who we're teaching the fundamentals of coding to. And one of the powerful things about this is that, it kind of opens up the parent, even if look, obviously we want them to be customers, from like cradle to college if we can. But even if we can't, the nice thing is that, you kind of open up parents to the fact that once you can teach a kid, logic, you can start teaching them technology, you can teach them coding. And this has really opened the door for us with a lot of young families who, lucky for us, just were in their beginning their search for programs like ours, or maybe hadn't even yet. And so that's given us somewhat of an advantage in that, by focusing on these younger students, we've been able to kind of become, known by these families who otherwise, maybe would have waited a couple of years and ended up going with a bigger player. And then, like I said, for whatever reason, we figured out a way to keep the kids wanting to come back by making the classes engaging and fun enough so the kids are happy. We also leverage the gamification aspect that I think all the kids also like. Then the other thing is for the parents, the kids have to be learning enough for them to think it's worthwhile. So it's this, it's this engagement and educational duality that we're constantly working with. And it's really it's that part of the curriculum. It's the training. It's the finding the right teachers. That's where the magic really comes into play. And that's, the hardest part about this industry.
Well, it sounds like you figured out all the hard parts and have it working in a good way now. Congratulations. It sounds like it's a great opportunity as well as a great service to the community for education. It seems like it's time to move education to the next level, and it looks like you're a good part of that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Sometimes at 1 a.m., I wonder what it is that I'm doing up at 1 a.m. But the nice thing about it, honestly, is that, for example, like today, which is pretty rare. I haven't had, when we started the business, I was the teacher. And today one of our instructors called in sick, and typically we'd have a sub. And I thought, I should just go do it because I haven't done it in such a long time. And, it's just like, maybe it's because I come from a big family and I like, also have kids. But it's just, you get to feel good about what you're doing because you have kids who have never tried something before. And then it becomes like a passion of theirs, right? It becomes a hobby of theirs. And that's just worth everything. So thank you.
Great. Well, great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is to enroll in one of our classes. No, just kidding. You can check out, of course, like LinkedIn, or also it's easy to remember, iCAMP.com.
Great. We'll put those in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Halti Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.